It's 3 in the morning. You jolt awake, heart pounding, drenched in sweat. Your mind races with a nameless dread. Something terrible is about to happen, but you can't say what. You lie there in the dark, gasping, convinced you're having a heart attack, or maybe a stroke. You check your pulse. You're fine, physically, but the panic doesn't ease. You're convinced something's wrong with you. If you've had moments like this, and you're wondering if something deeper is going on, you're in the right place. Subscribe to this channel. We're diving into the stuff about perimenopause that nobody talks about, but every woman needs to know. Here's what makes this feeling so confusing. It feels exactly like an anxiety disorder. It walks like one. It quacks like one. But when you start scrolling through your usual anxiety management strategies, the breathing exercises, the apps, the reassurance from friends, nothing lands the way it used to. And that's because perimenopause anxiety isn't the same as regular anxiety, even though they wear the same mask. Most women miss this distinction entirely. They chalk it up to getting older, or stress, or maybe finally admitting they've always been anxious. But something shifted. And if you can name what actually shifted, you get power back. Let's start with the first thing you've probably overlooked: timing. Regular anxiety doesn't follow a schedule. Perimenopause anxiety does. You might notice that your panic spikes right before your period, or in that 2-week window after ovulation. Your anxiety flares in clusters, not randomly. You might have a week where you feel almost normal, then suddenly spiral without warning. Except it's not without warning if you're tracking your cycle. Most women never make this connection because we're not taught to. We're taught that anxiety is about our thoughts, our stressors, our brain chemistry, not our hormones. But during perimenopause, where estrogen and progesterone are in free fall, 1 month they're stable-ish, the next month they crash. And your brain, which has spent decades running on a particular hormonal rhythm, feels it. If this timing connection is ringing true for you, drop a like, because understanding this changes everything. The second thing you're probably missing is this: perimenopause anxiety comes with physical symptoms that feel identical to a panic attack, but they're not actually panic. You might wake up with your heart racing, but there's no anxious thought triggering it. You might feel dizzy or lightheaded, or experience this weird electrical sensation in your limbs. Your chest feels tight. Your throat feels constricted. You might have hot flashes that your brain interprets as danger signals, which then spiral into actual panic. But the physical sensation came first, not the thought. Regular anxiety typically builds from a thought pattern. You worry about something. Your nervous system responds, and physical symptoms follow. But perimenopause anxiety? Your hormones shift, your body reacts, and then your mind scrambles to find a reason for the panic. You're not anxious because something's wrong. Something's wrong with your hormones, and anxiety is the symptom. The third critical difference is how your usual coping strategies fail you. You know this feeling. You've done the breathing exercise 100 times. You know it works. But 1 week, you're doing box breathing and it lands. And the next week, you're doing the same exact thing. And it's like you're trying to calm down a fire with a teaspoon of water. Nothing sticks. You start to wonder if you're broken. You're not broken. You're dealing with a physiological shift that can't be breathed away because it's not being generated by your nervous system. It's being generated by your endocrine system. The anxiety is real. The panic is real. But the mechanism is different, which means the solution has to be different too. And that's exactly why so many women find themselves in this strange space where they feel unheard by their doctors, invalidated by the anxiety advice that usually works, and increasingly convinced that they're losing their mind. You're not. You're experiencing perimenopause. And understanding that distinction is the first step toward actually addressing what's happening, instead of just white-knuckling through it. In the next section, we're going to connect the dots between your hormones and your anxiety symptoms in a way that actually makes sense. And more importantly, we're going to show you why recognizing this pattern leads to real solutions that work. So let's look at the two most telling differences that separate perimenopause anxiety from everyday worry. The first is about timing and patterns. With regular anxiety, you might experience it sporadically, triggered by specific stressors or situations. But perimenopause anxiety often follows a predictable monthly map. Your symptoms might intensify during certain phases of your cycle, then ease up again, only to return with clockwork precision the next month. This rhythmic escalation and relief isn't random. It's your hormone levels orchestrating a symphony, and your nervous system is responding to those fluctuations, whether you consciously realize it or not. Many women describe noticing that their panic, their racing thoughts, or that crushing sense of dread peaks just before their period, or in the days leading up to ovulation. Once you start tracking this pattern, writing down when anxiety hits, when it lifts, you'll likely see the connection that was invisible before. That clarity alone is transformative, because it shifts the story from something being fundamentally wrong with you to something that's biochemically predictable and manageable. The second key difference is neurological. During perimenopause, your brain chemistry is genuinely shifting. Estrogen and progesterone don't just affect your mood. They influence serotonin, dopamine, and GABA, the neurotransmitters that regulate calm, motivation, and emotional resilience. As these hormone levels fluctuate, your brain's ability to produce and utilize these chemicals becomes inconsistent. It's not that you're suddenly weak or broken, it's that the chemical environment your brain has relied on for decades is changing, and your neurology is adjusting. This explains why standard anxiety coping skills sometimes work beautifully and other times feel completely useless. It's not a failure on your part. It's biochemistry, and understanding this distinction is where real solutions begin. Here's what recognition actually does for you. When you identify that your anxiety is linked to hormonal fluctuation, you stop blaming yourself. You stop wondering if you're going crazy. You stop accepting diagnoses or medication suggestions that don't account for what's actually happening in your body. Instead, you become an informed advocate for yourself. You can walk into your doctor's office and say, "My anxiety peaks at this point in my cycle, and I've tracked it." That's not guessing, that's data. That's the beginning of targeted solutions. Targeted solutions might include hormone-aware therapy, where your treatment adjusts with your cycle. It might mean exploring whether bioidentical hormone support could help. It might mean adjusting the timing of medications you're already taking, or adding specific supplements like magnesium or B vitamins at strategic points in your cycle. It might mean lifestyle adjustments, increasing exercise intensity during high anxiety phases, prioritizing sleep during the luteal phase, when progesterone naturally supports rest. These aren't generic anxiety fixes. They're perimenopause-specific strategies that actually address the root cause. Beyond the medical interventions, there's something equally powerful: validation. When you finally understand that your anxiety isn't a character flaw or a mental health crisis, it's a normal response to abnormal hormone fluctuation, something shifts internally. You stop catastrophizing every anxious moment. You stop assuming the worst about yourself. You start seeing anxiety as a temporary state tied to your cycle, not as proof that you're fundamentally broken. That shift in perspective is healing. Many women also find that once they've identified the hormonal pattern, they feel empowered to seek out healthcare providers who actually understand perimenopause. They stop accepting dismissive responses. They advocate for thorough hormone testing. They ask about estrogen's neuroprotective role. They seek providers who recognize that anxiety during perimenopause often requires a different approach than anxiety in someone whose hormones are stable. You deserve that level of care. You deserve to be heard and believed. The cycle of misdiagnosis often happens because women don't connect the dots, and healthcare providers aren't trained to ask about the monthly pattern. But when you bring that awareness into the conversation, everything changes. Suddenly your symptoms make sense. Suddenly there's a framework for treatment that actually works. Suddenly, you're not chasing your tail with generic anxiety protocols that miss the point entirely. So as you leave this video, I want you to do one thing: start noticing. Grab a calendar or use a tracking app on your phone. Mark the days when anxiety feels worst. Mark the days when you feel calm. Track your cycle alongside it. Within 2 or 3 months, you'll likely see a pattern emerge. That pattern is your key. It's the difference between confusion and clarity, between self-blame and self-compassion, between feeling lost and finally understanding what's really happening in your body. If this video helped you connect some dots, please like it and subscribe so you never miss the next one. And I'd love to hear from you. In the comments, tell me, have you noticed your anxiety following a pattern tied to your cycle? Or is this the first time you're considering that connection? Your experience matters, and hearing from you helps this community grow. Thank you for being here, and I'll see you in the next one.